Scared.
Welcome, Mr. Matthews.
Hey, all right. I see cowards. First off, quit smiling. Why are you smiling?
Okay.
All I see, the one girl that went to the bathroom and went to the office to try to have something done about it, they said they couldn't do it because of Title IX, correct? Well, there is something you can do. You could create policy that goes out to the girls that says they can use the staff bathroom. One person on this board with a conversation told me that they can't turn away the girls from the staff bathroom. So why aren't you doing anything? My daughter, right here, sweetheart, tell these people, do you want a little boy to watch you pee?
No,
No. Why?
because inappropriate.
It's inappropriate. My 8-year-old daughter knows it's inappropriate, and yet y'all sit there silent.
Will someone please tell me why a man just walked up in the women's bathroom? And I looked at myself and I was like, I know I'm in the right bathroom. And then he proceeds to go in the back and look through all the showers and bathroom stalls. Like he was looking for someone or something. And this man did not work here. I know everybody that works here. He did not work here. I don't know what to do with this information.
As much as I would love to close the chapter on bathrooms, the reason why it remains a point of contention is that trans rights activists insist on playing dumb as to why maintaining single-sex spaces is more important than the feelings and validation of trans-identified people. TRAs insist that trans-identified males are owed access to women's changing rooms, locker rooms, bathrooms, and more on account of them being a type of woman. There are several ways in which this position is supported. This entitlement rests upon the assumption that so-called trans women are different from regular men. They presume that the exclusion of trans-identified males from women's spaces is a form of unfair exclusion of a kind of woman, often compared to racial segregation. This stance ignores that so-called trans women are men who maintain male socialization, male criminality patterns, and physical advantages towards women.
I looked up the laws in Washington State around public accommodation and found that it's illegal to exclude trans women from women's spaces.
She filed the report in early 2020. More than a year went by before Haven found out the commission directed the SPA to allow trans women. And for Haven, that was the end of it until the beginning of June this year.
I found myself getting targeted with hundreds of hate messages and threats of violence.
The messages shared with us, incredibly vile, but Haven wants you to hear some of what she's received.
You'll never be a woman. Go kill yourself. Haven Wilvich is a predator. Hope karma comes for this disgusting, misogynistic pervert.
To Haven's surprise, her complaint to the Human Rights Commission ended up in court documents. The SPA taking the commission to court because of its decision. That case was dismissed, but Haven's trouble had just started.
Transphobes on the internet were able to find my name in connection to this and are trying to place the blame for the change on me rather than on state law.
Now, it's state law concerning public disclosure of these complaints that's getting attention.
It was concerning to me, especially when you think about the violence that trans people suffer.
Civil rights attorney Scott Blankenship.
I think there should be the option of being able to do an anonymous complaint.
As it stands now, the form you fill out when filing a charge of discrimination warns any information or documents you submit to the commission are subject to public record laws. Blankenship believes laws need to change to protect those who come forward with claims of discrimination.
If you can't basically make a complaint without feeling that you're personally going to be at risk for doing it, it's going to chill people's rights, and that will end up hurting everyone.
Who knows how many people have read the form and saw the fine print about public disclosure and got turned away from changing things that need to be changed.
Haven hopes her story will push state lawmakers to reform public disclosure laws.
Minority people who make reports of human rights laws being violated should be protected from public disclosure.
As reported in a submission of written evidence by Professor Rosa Friedman, Professor Kathleen Stock, and Professor Alice Solovani in 2021, titled Evidence and Data on Trans Women's Offending Rates. This Swedish cohort study by DeJean et al. Followed a population of individuals who had undergone surgical and legal sex reassignment involving hormonal and surgical treatment between 1973 and 2003, 323 in total, and compared them to a matched control group of their birth sex. It is crucial to emphasize that this study looks only at those who have undergone hormonal and surgical transition, which is a much tighter group than individuals who self-identify as transgender. The primary purpose of this study was to consider whether medical transition helps patients, leads to better social and health outcomes, and to inform what support they might need post-transition. It is methodologically robust, peer-reviewed, large-scale comparative source on offending rates comparing trans women and women. It compared the likelihood of a person having one or more criminal convictions and convictions for violent crime, defined as homicide and attempted homicide, aggravated assault and assault, robbery, threatening behavior, harassment, arson, or any sexual offense. The study can be divided into two cohorts, 1973 to 1988 and 1989 to 2003, with the difference being the latter cohort received adequate mental health provision. The findings show that the transsexual individuals were more likely to be criminal than non-transsexuals of the same birth sex in the first cohort, and no different from their birth sex in the second group. The researchers state, male to females retained a male pattern regarding criminality. The same was true regarding violent crime. MTF transitioners were over 6 times more likely to be convicted of an offense than female comparators, and 18 times more likely to be convicted of a violent offense. The group had no statistically significant differences from other natal males for convictions in general or violent offending. The group examined were those who committed a surgery and so were more tightly defined than a population based solely on self-declaration. In other words, trans-identified males commit sexual offenses at a higher rate than regular men or women, illustrating the danger of allowing them access to female spaces. Cases of men entering women's spaces to perv on women and girls are commonly reported and often brushed aside by trans rights activists who claim that these are not true trans women.
So, Wednesday morning, I went to the guidance counselor and told her since I was second on the hit list, knowing that there was something going to happen, because there was a girl she was targeting every day at lunch, and they would go to the counselor and tell them every day that this is going to happen. And Wednesday, I went with 2 others, and each of us filled out a whole paper full of what's going to happen and why it's going to happen. And then I went to chorus, and I was told, watch your back. He is going to come for you and this other girl at lunch. And when I was at lunch, I was terrified, and I told Miss Fattori that that was happening, and she said, don't worry about it, it's not going to happen. Early that morning, I was told I was not going to see Mel for the rest of that week. But I was in lunch, and all of a sudden I just hear all this screaming and everybody running. And I see Mel running in after somebody, and everyone's screaming and running. But the girl who got attacked didn't see it because she was face backwards. And all of a sudden you just hear these terrible, loud bangs of the Stanley bouncing off her head. And then you see Mel grabbing her hair and hitting her against the table and just repeatedly hitting her with the Stanley. There was blood going everywhere. I was the table right behind it, and all you see is blood everywhere. And it was just, and then you say in your email that it was 8 minutes, but we timed it, it was 28 minutes. And we had to sit in there and watch them clean up her blood off those tables and ground. And we had to watch them take her out with blood dripping down her face, and I will never forget that. And laying in bed last night, I just kept repeating it in my head, and we shouldn't have had to sit there and just watch them clean up her blood with the mop. Watch her repeatedly yelling that I'm going to murder you and just hitting her with a Stanley. And I don't get how, that you couldn't have stopped it. It was 5 hours from when I told you it was going to happen and when it happened. It was 5 whole hours. I don't get how you couldn't have stopped that. And how Miss Fattori said, don't worry, it's not going to happen. We have her under control. But clearly you didn't.
You assured us that these policies were perfectly safe. See, Loudoun County, Virginia, a trans student was allowed into the women's bathroom where he assaulted a girl. They moved him to another school where he did it again. See, Irvine, California last month, where a trans student entered the women's locker room and flashed the girls there. When they confronted him, he mercilessly beat them. This happened again in Gwinnett County, Georgia. This happened again in Oklahoma City. This happened again in Ohio, where a trans man was allowed to use the locker room where he was arrested for flashing little girls. The judge dropped the charges after he ruled that this man was too fat for them to see anything. In this city, a man using they, them pronouns hunted down and killed a female jogger because he, quote, wanted to look just like her. You will no longer be able to look into the eyes of your constituents and honestly say that you are unaware of the assaults that inevitably take place when we declare to women, you have no right to privacy.
However, when the definition of woman is changed to be nothing more than an impossible to verify emotion, anyone who says that they are a woman must be one under gender ideology. Deferring to gender over biological sex puts women and girls at risk of sexual violence and harassment, without any way to seek protection, as so-called trans women are guaranteed access based on nothing more than their word that they really, really mean it when they say that they identify as a woman.
Now, gender can be anything you like. It's entirely cultural. But unfortunately, sex is not entirely cultural. It's something you're born with, whether you like it or not. And most of us who grow up to be women, who have our first period, 12, 13, 14, whatever, traumatizing otherwise, a body we thought we knew becomes smelly and dirty and different. And then the boys come along who've been watching pornography and say that we're not groomed, we have to remove our body hair and so on. We're going to spend our lives removing body hair. That's femininity, which is the fake version of femaleness. Female is real and it's sex, and femininity is unreal and it's gender. And it's a role you play. And for that to become the given identity of women is a profoundly disabling notion.
Don't you feel that you'd be able to spend more time on all of those questions if you just moved on from this trans question and said, okay, fine, if you want to join us as women, then you're women. Come and join us in the bigger struggles.
Well, they're not going to help us much with postpartum psychosis, are they? Or even with menstrual discomfort. Or, I think we can manage. You know, we are 51% of the population, and we're being held to ransom by a handful of people who are extremely vocal and aggressive. And that's no surprise to any of us. I mean, I don't understand why we have to make a mockery of older women. And that's universal. You say to me, I'm offending people. Every time you get vilified because you're an old woman, and you only have to be 50, not very old. I'm now 80. I'm as old as you like. And you can call me senile and anything else you want to call me. But I'm not going to be hijacked for this question of sexual identity, of gender identity. Look, I wrote a book a long time ago about how you get made into a woman. In those days, we called it conditioning. And you could see it happens from birth. Little baby girls are left to cry for longer than baby boys. They are fed for shorter periods than baby boys. We want them to be smaller than baby boys, and so on and so on and so on. And it goes right through our entire lifespan where we're learning femininity. And it's a masquerade. It's not who we really are. There is nothing feminine about being pregnant. It's almost the antithesis of that. There's nothing feminine about giving birth. It's a bloody struggle, and you've got to be strong and brave. There's nothing feminine about breastfeeding. God knows it drives everybody mad. They want to see nice, big, pumped-up tits, but they don't want to see them doing their job. And it just goes on and on. That masquerade is what is now being presented to us back as the real deal. With the hair extensions and the false eyelashes. And you think, why do you think that's real?
Trans-identified males are still males, no matter their testosterone levels or how feminine they dress. Men and women have different bodies as a result of their differing sexes, which grants men strength advantages, amongst others. The American College of Sports Medicine published a statement in 2023 which noted, biological sex is a determinant of athletic performance. Adult males are faster, stronger, more powerful than females because of fundamental sex differences in anatomy and physiology dictated by sex chromosomes. Before puberty, sex differences in athletic performance are minimal. Significant differences emerge at puberty, around 12 years, due to anabolic effects of testosterone in males. Testosterone levels rise 20 to 30-fold in males during puberty and are 15 times higher in males than females. Direct effects of testosterone during male puberty include increased skeletal muscle mass due to larger muscle fiber cross-sectional area, especially fast, type 2 fibers, lower percentage body fat, higher hemoglobin concentration and mass, larger ventricular mass, the heart, and cardiac volumes. larger airways and lungs, greater body height, and longer limbs. Adult males are stronger, more powerful, and faster than females of similar age and training status. The sex difference in athletic performance, where endurance or muscular power is required, is roughly 10 to 30% depending on the event. Finally, although many like to argue as if trans-identified males are impossible to discern from actual women, often drawing in comparisons to women of color, as if being a non-white woman makes her less female and thus comparable to a man, it's simply not true.
So I just got home from work, and today, for the first time, I dressed fully feminine in public, in the broad light of day. It was to a luncheon at my work with the board of directors of the theater company I work for. I wore my lemon dress and my keffiyeh. And you know, it in the grand scheme of things might seem like a small victory, but you gotta let yourself celebrate your small victories. Because there's a lot of times when those big ones feel really few and far between. And right now, for me, every little victory I get is one more step that I have taken towards being fully myself, towards not hiding who I am any longer. And that feels like something to celebrate to me.
Humans are skilled at determining sex, even without social markers, like expected gendered hair and clothes. As reported in Sex Perception from Facial Structure, Categorization with and without skin texture and color. In a sociocultural context, there are several conventional signals that indicate a person's sex through their faces, such as hairstyle, facial hair, clothing, accessories, makeup, etc. However, research shows that even when all these traditional cues are removed, people are still able to identify sex with 96 to 98% accuracy from facial stimuli. Sex identification of faces without any cultural or conventional sex cue is primarily based on two independent components: A, shape or facial structure, and B, surface reflectance, skin texture, and color. Often, support of trans-identified males in female bathrooms rests on the assumption that trans-identified males are indistinguishable from women. However, most don't pass in person as a result of their male bodies, which cannot be hidden via clothes or makeup, such as having larger hands, shoulders, a lack of hips, specific face shapes, and more. It's important to note that it is not the existence of one trait on its own, but the culmination of many secondary male sex characteristics that makes men identifiable regardless of what they wear. Women who happen to be thinner or broad-shouldered still have a myriad of other secondary sex characteristics that identify them as female. In any case, even those that may hypothetically pass still have male physical advantages and strength which can be used to harm women and girls. A final assumption is that those who want access and claim to be transgender just want to pee. In other words, an assumption of a lack of bad faith players who seek to take advantage of the loophole created wherein anyone who says they are a woman is one, and thus cannot be removed from single-sex spaces. This is often joined with the argument that a space being assigned to a single sex does not keep predators away, but this argument fails to acknowledge that by creating and upholding a boundary, it can be safely assumed that anyone crossing it is doing so with ill will, creating both social and legal pressure not to do so. It's obvious to anyone not engaged in maladaptive fantasies or supposedly kind denials of reality why we retain single-sex spaces. Not only is it incredibly offensive to argue that women's concerns about their safety, privacy, and dignity are unfounded, but it's simply untrue. As much as trans rights activists like to claim that there is no danger in offering men access to private female spaces, the facts, research, and damn common sense says otherwise. This, dear viewers, is where we part. I woke up like 5 minutes before I started doing this. This is the first thing I've said all day, so that's why my voice sounds like this if it sounds off. Anyhow, this is another in the series of things I'm tired of talking about but can never cease talking about, because people continue to want to be stupid. I really, really get frustrated that people like to play dumb as to why women have an issue with men entering the bathroom. And often it hinges on, well, this really stupid argument that, oh, well, they're just a type of woman, so you're being exclusionary. No, they're male. Same thing that I get in the comment section sometimes, like, for example, in the latest trans man video on overall health, right? Well, trans men weren't included in this study. It's about regular cis women who had testosterone level. You realize that they're all women, right? There's no division. So-called cis women and trans men, they're all female. Same thing goes for trans women. It's just very frustrating to me that I'm stuck arguing, again, and I've mentioned this in several videos, with what feels like kindergartners. You know, like, I remember I had a kid when I used to work in teaching who, like, made some kind of comment about how I was ugly, right? And one of my friends was like, oh, I must have hurt your feelings. No, why would it? Not everyone's opinion is worth the same weight. It's like a weighted grading scale, right? Maybe you have that one test that's worth 50% of your grade. Those are people who are intelligent and who you might personally know. Great, that opinion's worth more. The majority of people who are talking out of their ass on this topic are complete imbeciles, or they just don't want to think about it that hard, because thinking about it would force them to confront the fact that majority of the world is just insistent on male feelings of superiority and validation over female safety. Anyhow, if you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!